coordinator and the IQAC member of the St. Mary's College, Sultan Bateri. And of course, not to speak about the other members also who are a part of the organizing team of this one-day national webinar. Let me thank you for inviting me uh, to this webinar to give my thoughts on the successful completion of major and minor projects. So as Ganesh said, I have done a couple of major projects and of course minor projects also, and I'll share with you all my experiences that I went through in getting through these proposals and also in completing these projects. I hope this webinar, my thoughts that I'm going to share with you will be equally helpful to all of you who are here for this webinar. So let me just start off with a very formal note on what exactly are we looking for in this format of preparing research proposals and so on. So when we talk about the education roadmap, for any individual for that matter, they are driven through the alleys of, let us say, non-formal, formal, and informal paths. Now, the Indian education system is on the verge of a total revamp, just like what Dr. Ganesh said. We are going through a crisis. Well, we can make out whether this is going to be a crisis or we are going to learn something new. Of course, I'm sure that this particular crisis has helped us to learn a lot of new things in challenging things in education scenario. So, as I said, this education sector is on the verge of a revamp, and necessarily so because the formal path to education, with its hierarchical structure of institutions, full-time, proper subject-oriented certifications, we have different kinds of courses, degrees, and by far, for many reasons, have overshot its target. Now, similarly, when we talk about practical adult learning, which involves diverse contents, and this also encourages what we talk about as learners' participation from blended learning experiences or real life experiences. When we talk about blended learning experiences, we talk about what is meant by both real life experiences as well as the theoretical part of teaching learning process. And these real life experiences and the local resources in the informal medium of education as well, as a long process of learning, which we learn from the home, from experiences, from environments, and of course, from work. I'm sure it has got its own shortfalls. Now, the research scenario in the Indian education panorama therefore has to go, let me say it has not been very different. We have been going through a lot of these kinds of challenges before. Now, continuing on a redundant syllabus. Now, we see that in most of our university systems as well. We are still teaching the same old content without what we talk about as revisions on a regular basis. So the syllabus content has become more or less quite redundant nowadays. Now, we are continuing on a redundant syllabus, which is due to modest and, of course, fragmented efforts in the past to change, uh, points to the dearth in producing original ideas. Now, that is where this entire topic of research project proposals come into picture. Now, to revert or to reverse this inertness, this calls for creating an atmosphere where students are encouraged to adapt to transdisciplinary forms of education, or let us say interdisciplinary forms of education and research in every higher education campus. And that is where our role comes in. Now, this also inspires a shift from the time tested methodology of reproducing from textbooks, from reference books in examinations, which had largely led to the discounting of reasonable levels of critical thinking. Now, the objective now in front of us is how to bridge this gap between teaching and research. And now the biggest question that would be in front of us would always remain: what constitutes the writing of a project proposal? Just like what Dr. Ganesh said. I wish to run you through the details pragmatically. As I said, I will run you through what my experiences were and still is on doing and successfully completing a project. At the outset, let me tell you one thing. We need to understand the basic difference between a minor and a major project, and the criterion of the eligibility for a candidate like you or me or anybody else to be considered for undertaking a project. Now, the duration, the budget, these are only differentiating factors between the major and the minor projects. Let me tell you, perhaps a major project might take about 24 months, a minor project would be take around 12 months, and the budget, the highest, the ceiling that would be provided to you, maybe by some of the research agencies. It differs from agencies to agencies, but yes, the one that we are all quite familiar with, the UGC or the ICSSR, the ICMR or the DSIR or the DST for that matter, they would always start for a minor project. The ceiling would be 5 lakhs, and for a major project, it goes from 5 to 15 lakhs. And the duration. That is why I said the duration and the budget, these are the basic differences which we talk about between a major and a minor project. The eligible candidates, of course, are required to have a PhD. And well, the minor project does not ask us to specifically have a PhD, but a major project always say that this is a mandate that you should be a PhD holder. And I'm sure you'll find that in every website of a funding agency. And it also requires you to be either working or retired as faculties. And you can be a senior government or a defense officer with a demonstrable research experience through publications, of course, research papers, reports. And of course, you should be well connected with institutions having requisite uh, research infrastructure, or of course, institutes of national importance or affiliates of the funding agencies. So this is how I wanted to start off and tell you something about, as an introduction part to how do I go ahead and tell you about my experiences about research projects and how to write a research proposal. What I will do right now is I will just present a PowerPoint presentation to make it much more clearer to you.
You are mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. It just got muted automatically. Yeah, what I will do is I will just switch off my camera so that I can preserve my bandwidth, and I'll start presenting my a PPT, my presentation. Okay. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
thank you, Ganesh. Yes. So as we were talking about how do I successfully complete a major and a minor project. So let's just first of all ask the question as to why are we here? Now, the first thing is, of course, I am sure that we did, as Ganesh said, we do have a very good number of participants today. And I'm sure all of you are looking forward to find out here what are those um, best ingredients for successfully completing. And of course, how do even before successfully completing a major or a minor project, the biggest question is, how do I nail a project? Now, well, there aren't any shortcuts to getting through to a project. The first thing that I would like to tell you is the basic ingredient for you is to have a basic balance between very good external and, let us say, an intrinsic motivation. I'm sure that all of you would be very much anxious, or you might be nervous when it comes to applying for a research project. That was the same thing that happened to me as well. It is still the same thing, because it is always, let us say, a very big challenge when it comes to how do I get a research project. So I thought this would be an apt way to start off my presentation. And as I said, I know that this topic looks very, very serious. So let's just try to make it on a lighter note. Okay, so when we talk about looking forward and writing a proposal, the best thing that you have to do is you should know a few things while you write a proposal. How is it socially applicable in a societal context, or how is it going to help the economy? So these are some of the basic things that you need to know, and this is what should motivate you to write a project proposal. Now, let's get down to business 1.0. So the first thing that I would like to tell you is to how to write a research proposal. And then later on, as the second part of my presentation, I would also tell you about the names and of a few funding agencies which you could apply to. You can keep checking at the website to find out different, calls for writing proposals, and of course, submitting your proposals for getting projects. Now, the three questions, as I said, one is, what is a research proposal? The second one, which we will be talking about, is sorry, what are the main elements in a research proposal? And of course, the third, the basic thing, that is the catch, is what is your research topic? It's very important to have a real catchy research topic which aligns with the contemporary, or let us say the issues in when I talk about being a management teacher, I would always think about, okay, what are the contemporary issues in management, or let us say what is happening in the Indian economy right now, what is it that is a crisis for us which we need to solve. So that should be how you should be finding out your research topic. So we will just quickly discuss about that. Now, as I said, let's just start off this presentation in a light note, on a lighter note. So I'm trying to align this into a proposal between a lady and a gentleman. And it is more like that. I mean, it is a marriage between the funding agency and, of course, the researcher for at least a period. When we talk about a proposal, as such, that is between a groom and a bride, of course, that is coming up would be forever, but at least for a project, it is for a limited time. But it's almost the same way that you do it. So how do you get people to notice you with your research proposal? So that is why I thought, let us just start off this presentation on a lighter note, uh, on a marriage between, let us say, the research project that you have, the proposal that you have, and of course, the funding agency. So the meaning of research and proposal is right there in front of you. We all know what research is. I can see that most of you are PhD holders. So you have gone through that grilling, grinding, killer routine of taking up a doctorate degree. So I know how it feels for each one of you as to how you became a doctorate holder. So let me not go too much into telling you what is meant by research. But yes, I just wanted to break it down. So I put it down as research, and exactly the next one is a proposal. So as I said, it is a recommendation which is seeking a consideration, or yes, it is an approval from the second party. In our case here is the funding agency on what is to be done and how you will be doing it. So if you have gone for any interviews for research proposal presentations to any funding agency, they would always be asking you that. How do you do it, and why do you want to do it, and what is it that you want to do with your research proposal? So when you talk about a good research proposal, it gives you an overview about the entire project. And that is exactly how you should be writing a proposal. It should be a capsule form of what you are planning to do in the next 24 months. And it would give you a very well informed decision about every here it is said as a nut and a bolt about every nook and corner of your research work. So you should be having a fairly good idea about what is it that you're going to do. And you should be able to convince the people there in the funding agency about how well connected your research proposal would be with the societal issues or with any other issues that is happening in the country as such, or at least in this world or the universe. So, as I said, a research proposal is something that would outline what your proposed research is about. Yes, so you would be having it is short of a summary, or let us say it is sort of summarizing your entire research project into maybe 3 or 4 pages, so that you will be able to explain to your people or to the agency as to what exactly are you going to do, what you're trying to find out, and to achieve, how you're going to do it, and what is it that we talk about the future directions or the implications of your study, or what is the significance or what is worth learning in your study. So, just as the marriage between a bride and a groom, it's about a lot of transactions between the funding agency and the researcher. You are talking about how well are you going to carry out the relationship with the research agency. So, that is what we mean by a research proposal. Now, what should the component of a research proposal be? So, you can see the entire chart which I put forth about right from the point of time of an engagement between a gentleman and a lady to, of course, the wedding, the honeymoon, and settling down for life. So, this is what happens between a bride and a groom. And this is exactly what should also be happening between the research funding agency and the researcher. It is more or less a marriage, as I said, at least for some period of time. So, the proposal that you're going to write should capture what we want to find out and how we are going to do it. So, what and the how to it. And these are two strong points that should be emphasized in your research proposal. It should strengthen the study, the significance, the limitations, or in case of any problems that or challenges. Let us not say problem, let us say the challenges that you might be facing in your study. Then it should be having a proper structure, a direction to the study. You should be knowing, like you bead the necklace, or rather, when you like you string the beads of a necklace. You should know after a white bead, there should be a red bead, and then a white bead and a red bead. So you know what should happen in sequence to one another. So you should know what should happen from step one to step two to three and then four. It should not be in a haphazard manner, but rather there should not be any ambiguity in the way that you present your ideas. It should facilitate what we call as a proper understanding of your aims and objectives. So these are the different titles which I will be telling you in the later part of my presentation. How do you write it? This, of course, would increase chances at the funding and what we talk about a broader acceptability. Now, the other things that you have to put, other important components that should come in a research proposal would always be what are the different research questions that you would have to ask. I can show you a number of samples, as I said later. Now, why is it that your research is important in this particular present context? Now, a very important question that every research funding agency would always ask, because see, the money is theirs. So when they give you the money, they should be very, very clear as to whether they're giving it to the right person, whether they're giving the right amount of money to carry out the right amount, the right kind of research. And that is why there's always this argument, why do you think your research is important in this present scenario? So is it worth the while? So how would I take a philosophical stance to it? What are the different philosophies which we talk about the literature? So are there any literature backing to it? Or how else, how can we actually make it done? Or how do I get it done? How do I identify my research gaps? What is the problem statement? The methodological stance that I'm going to take. What should my research methodology be? Is it reliable enough? What should be my methodological stance in the sense my data collection methods? Should I go for a primary data or should I go for a secondary data? Should I use an experimental method, a pre-test and a post-test? Should I use a control group? So these are different kinds of research questions that would come in the methodological stance that I should be taking while I write my research proposal. But there's always this, it can change. See, when you go with a research proposal, does not mean that it is the final stand to your study. It can always change because you're only summarizing, or it's just a snapshot. It's just a synopsis to what you're going to present. So you should have a fairly good idea about what you're going to write or how you're going to collect your data. But always there's a disclaimer. There can be changes that can happen, but slight changes. Your topic should never change, of course. Now, of course, there should be a lot of secondary reading that you should do, like, as I said, literature review, which would always give you a philosophical stance on why you should be doing this. Now, let us just get on to what are the four important pieces that you have to take into consideration while you write a research proposal. One is the phase, process, product, and the plan. Now, the phase, as I said, is the importance of doing a project right now. What is the importance of doing this particular topic right now? Now, if you're going to do something about the COVID pandemic, what is happening during this time? It's a very relevant topic. If you're doing something like that, you're doing something about waste management. It is a very relevant topic. You're doing something on climate change. What is relevant in this current scenario is what we need to take up. We cannot use something that is so very redundant, that has been researched so many times, umpteen number of times, because the results are out there and people know it. They can always predict the results. So always go and find out something unique in your proposal, which would always catch the eye or catch the attention of the interviewers or the evaluators of any research funding agency. The process is, of course, about how do you plan to take up your research work. It talks about the research methodology. It talks about how you're going to analyze it, so on and so forth. The product is, of course, the document that you're going to prepare as for which you're going to submit for approval. And finally, a plan. You should always have a plan and a timeline. Well, that is always there. I mean, there would be a budget plan. There would be exactly what we talk about as an expenditure plan. You would have a timeline. These are all, the plan is not a very difficult thing for you to do, because having done a couple of them, you must be having done a research work, you having been doctoral scholars. I'm sure you would always have had a plan about how you need to start off and complete. But the remaining things are very, very important as to what should be included in the substance of how you're going to present your proposal. Now, taking you to another part of how, when we talk about writing a research proposal, you should be very, very clear about the qualities of how you should be writing it. So, when I went through a lot of readings, I found that a research proposal should have these qualities. One is, it should be engaging, it should be directive, it should be unique, it should be holistic, it should be keen. You can just see that in the picture there. The guy is holding a flower. Now, how do you think the guy would engage the lady who's sitting there watching by the seaside? And how is it that he's going to get her? So there would be a lot of transactions that would happen before the girl finally falls for him, right? So this is exactly what is expected of you also in a research funding agency. You should be writing your proposal in such a way that you should be able to engage the person who's going to read it. And how do you engage? Your title should be catchy. You should be stand out. You should be a standout. You should be a stand-alone topic, which would catch the attention of your uh, uh, the evaluator in the funding agency. Directive is, you should have a proper direction. Of course, everybody, when you're writing a proposal, you should know what you want. So you should be very clear and precise, very crisp about what you want to do. There should not be a pinch of ambiguity. Uniqueness is very, very important. When I say that you are going to write something on climate change, or you're going to write something about data privacy, data mining, big data, these are big, big buzzwords that we use today for what we talk about current topics. The same thing would also apply to science subjects, and of course engineering subject or any other technical subject. You people know what is happening in your field right now, so always um, catch on to that new unique topic and then build up what you want to write. So please leave out those redundant, leave out those past topics, historical topics, which will have no value of what you're going to do right now. So always try to engage, direct, be unique. Holistic must be in such a way where you're trying to give a solution to the entire concern. You should be able to give an answer, or rather you should be able to generalize. When we talk about management subjects, I know it is very difficult in the case of scientific subjects, but in management we always try, in some of them at least, we always try to give a generalizations. Like it might not always be true in the case of science subjects or in management subjects as well. It differs from topic to topic. In some topics we can give a generalization, but rather when we say holistic, we are actually trying to look at how exactly can I give an answer to people in the same area, or how do I give a proper solution to the concern, so that it would also be beneficial to some other people as well who are in the same subject or the area. And of course, the last one should be keen. You should be very, very engaging, very keen, and motivated till the end of your project. So, based on all that, would only be how you get your project proposal. So, having said about the first part of the research proposal, the things that should motivate you, so now there would not be any fear on how you should be writing it. You already now know what are the things that you have to keep in mind while you start. We haven't started yet. While you start writing a research proposal. So these are the different P's that you need to know. These are the different qualities that you should have while you start writing a research proposal. And of course, this should take you down to the next level of our business, that is 2.0. Now, this is how a format of a research proposal would look like. You know it. You know that you should have a title, you should have a background of the study, we have a number of research questions, the third one. We also talk about research methods or methodology. We talk about working plan and schedule, and of course, references or bibliography. So this is a very normal format that all of us would follow. And usually they say, any funding agency would say that they do not want too many things to be written in the research proposal. They would say that it should be around 2,500 to 4,000 words. So this is how this is the usual general headings that you would find. Now, I have also put in a research proposal flow chart, which also tells you on how do you start off. What are the things that you have to write under introduction? As I said, the what, why, and how, the most important things that every person who would be reading your research proposal would start off with the introduction. So the basic things about the research proposal can come in this. So you can put in the summary of the proposal, you can put in the research questions as well. But again, it might differ because every funding agency has got a different format, so you might have to change it accordingly. But generally, you would find it this way. The literature review is about, as I said, the readings that you have done so that you arrive at the research gaps, which says that it would help you to find a hole, it would help you to look for discussions or debates, and then these three things here on the left side would help you to understand about what are the current readings that you have done in literature review. The methodology is how are you going to do this? So that talk about everything. It talks about your sampling frame, your sampling units, the research design, the data collection, how are you trying to go ahead with your data analysis, and so on. So you might think that these are very, very simple stuffs. But what is important here is how exactly are you going to frame this? You might be knowing everything of this because you've already done the same exercise, the same grilling exercise while you were doing your PhD, but you will have to do that the same way in a smaller uh, in a smaller way, but yes, in a much more crispier and precise way, because you do not have a huge area to study. Your study would be the area, or let us say the frame, the sampling frame, the units would be much, much smaller than you do in your PhD work. Then the data collection comes next, or rather, you would have a preliminary data as to perhaps if you have done if this is what we call as a working paper that you have done before, maybe you might be having some findings of your working paper. You can incorporate that into your preliminary data as well. And then you have the statement of limitations, the challenges that you might be aware. I'm sure that most of us will not know what are the limitations of the study at the time of writing a proposal, but you might be knowing that these might be the limitations that I might face while I'm starting off with my research work. That is what they're trying to ask you. What are the challenges that you think that you might face in the study? And you have to be a little careful while you write the limitations of the study, because it should not sound too negative or too pessimistic. Because if you sound too pessimistic, then the evaluator, or rather the funding agency, would say that if it is so very difficult, how do you think you're going to take up the study? So you should write, in case you're writing challenges, you should be writing the challenges in such a way that you can face them, or rather you can always get rid of them in while you do your work. And finally comes your conclusion. Your conclusion would always be about your implications, the importance, the contributions that you're going to do that you're going to have from the study, the future directions of the study, and so on. Now let us get into the most important part of the presentation here. Let me just take you through the different heads, and I shall also show you a sample of how you should be writing this. So these are the different proposal headings that you will be having. First one is, of course, the title page, table of contents, the title, the aims and the objectives, introduction, the literature, research design, ethical considerations, conclusions, and bibliography. Now, the ethical considerations could be something about what exactly do you think are the future implications of the study, or future directions of the study, and so on. How is it that it's going to contribute to the society? This are just the general headings that come. It might differ from agency to agency. Not all agencies use the same kind of headings, but more or less the rationale of writing a proposal is the same. So let's just go to the first part. It's a title page. Now, this is how your title should be looking like. It should be very brief. Immediately you should be telling the purpose of the study and, of course, the desired outcome. Now, for instance, I put in my proposal, which I got from the ICSSR. This is a major project which was awarded to me a couple of years back. And the title of the study was Women, Entrepreneurship and Tourism Development. And this was a study with special reference to the self-help groups in Karnataka and Kerala. So the title is brief. It tells the purpose of the study. And of course, I'm trying to find out the women entrepreneurship and tourism development in SNGs in 2 states. So I'm also talking about the desired outcome. So the name of the supervisor, the department, and all the other details should come in the title page. So that is very simple. The second one is the rationale, or the introduction, or the abstract. Now, there are different ways by which different agencies might put it. Some of them might just say it as an introduction and so on. And this is where you should have a very catchy summary of what the proposed research is about. So what are you going to do in your research? So everything that you want to do in your research should be very precisely, crisply put in your introduction. Why, what, and how. How, these are the 3 questions that you have to answer in a very small way in your introduction part. Because when you give that in your introduction part, it gives a very easy picture to the funding agency to understand that this person here knows what he or she is going to do. So that is exactly what you have to put under your rationale of the study. Now, I have put a sample here. Now, this is something that I put in as my research. I have taken the sample from different project studies of mine. So this is one which I took from my uh, ICSSR project. And this is something that I put as the introduction part. So a small paragraph which explains the rationale, the introduction of my study. So I have put in the aim of my study here. I have put the significance of the study here. I have also tried to put in the challenges that must have been faced by the SHGs, so that is the reason why I want to take up a topic like this. But this is kind of a very old topic now. Now, I do not know, this must have become a redundant topic. You'll have to delve into more uh, contemporary topics to get hold of a research project. The next part, so we are done with the title and the introduction. The next part of a research proposal, the third one, is a statement of the problem. Now, what do you write in the problem statement? So these are the answers that the research agency is looking for. Why did you choose this research topic? A very relevant question. I am sure each one of you must have faced this question every time that you go in for an interview with the research agency. What is lacking in the current literature? What are your research gaps? A very relevant question that you must have asked your students while guiding them, or you must have been asked by your guide while he was guiding or she was guiding your PhD work. What are the specific questions that you want to answer in this research? So you can always put your research questions if you want to in this as well. And what do you want to prove? Be it a science project, or a technical project, an engineering project, or yes, a business or a management project. These are the similar questions or familiar questions that all of you would have to answer. The only thing is that the topic would be different, but yes, you will all have to answer the same kind of questions. This would tell you about the statement of the problem. And from here, you get your research gaps from the literature, and therefore you also have what we talk about as research questions. As I said, this is a sample of the statement of the problem. Sorry. So this tells about the problem statement. In my case, I had put this down as the research questions as well. So I found out what the research gaps were. I wrote down why I'm doing such kind of a research. And yes, the research gaps led to those research questions. So I had about 4 research questions. I think I just put it 4 here. You can have maybe 4 or 5, whatever, but not too many. The lesser the number, the more narrower you can get down to understand the depth in which you can go and find out about the solutions on your research problem. So, what is the trend and pattern of tourism in Kerala and Karnataka, so on and so forth? I'm not reading the questions. I just wanted to put in a sample for you to see how to write a statement problem. Sorry, a problem statement. The next part, the fourth topic or the fourth title head should be the scope and the limitation. Scope would always tell us about the coverage of my research. Now, in my research project, I put in this particular project, I put in Karnataka and Kerala. So you would have to come up with a research methodology as to how are you going to divide the regions of these 2 states. Now, different specializations, like in science, you would have more of an experimental method. You would have laboratory experiments. So I give a lot of examples from my area because of my experiences in management. So do pardon me. I mean, I do apologize if I'm not relating to your kind of experiments, but I am sure that you would have the same kind of headings. Only difference would be that, okay, you might have more of a laboratory kind of experimentation, or you would have a lot more of testing to be done. But while you write a proposal, I think more or less this should be the same. When we talk about management researchers, this is how we do it. We always have to talk about the coverage. Now, even in science, you would have to talk about coverage. What kind of people are you going to experiment on? What kind of subjects are you going to take? Or what are the kind of respondents that you're going to take? So that talks about the coverage, the market segment, the demography. Now, this includes what is not part of the research. It tells us what should not be taken, and it tells us what should be taken, what are the limitations that we might be facing, what are the time, the resources, etc. So this is what we talk about in the scope, and of course the limitations or the challenges of the study. This is yet just another sample. uh, Now, this is another part of a research study which I did. This was on data privacy, and this was on social media, and this talked about the scope. Now, the scope was about what exactly is the coverage that I would be taking in while I'm conducting my research on social media, and of course, what are the challenges that I would be facing. So the last paragraph talks about the challenges. The constraints in the implementation of the study is face-to-face access to individuals who play key roles in the major world events. So some of these challenges are something that cannot be moved or changed. You can always put that as well. Now, the next part of your research proposal should be your significance. So we're coming on to the fifth one. So the significance of the study should be telling you this: the relevance of your study, or why is this important, or what is the future direction to the study. Now, for whom will this be very, very significant? Now, when a research funding agency is ready to give you money, they will always find out, are we spending the money to this particular candidate for the right thing? So, will their results be good enough for what kind of sector? So, you should either be saying, now, in my case, in my project study, which I just showed you right now, I would say that the study would help the tourism sector, the entrepreneurship sector. Likewise, the other study which I did would always say that, okay, it's going to help the social media, or it would give answers to online data privacy. So it would give answers to Facebook and Twitter as to how can they handle or help protect data privacy. So this is what is meant by to which sector is it going to be most significant. Now, what can be gained in terms of the scholarly benefit, or let us see the academic contributions of the research, or we can also say managerial contributions of research. All this talks about the future implications of the study, and of course the uniqueness that the proposal offers. Every time, as I said, uniqueness, engaging, being focused, these are all very, very important things on or about a research proposal. I remember that one of my research proposals which I got from UGC was on tribal suicides. And it was one of its kind when I presented this at the UGC in Delhi. They called me up for an interview and they said that this proposal is very unique for its topic because very interestingly, this particular project work which I did was on the tribal suicides of Paniyans in Wayanad. So uh, it was very interesting for me to do the study because I did a lot of visits to the district of Wayanad in Kerala to find out about why are the Paniyan tribes, or let us say the suicide rates of the Paniyan tribes in Kerala, in Wayanad, are increasing. So it was a very interesting study which included a lot of, other than survey research, there was a lot many more FGDs and things of that kind with tribal officers, welfare officers. And one reason why I was given the research work was because of the uniqueness of the topic. So that is one thing that you should be keeping in mind when you write the significance of the study. You should be able to make your topic look very, very unique. So as I said, this is just another sample of the significance of the study. So this is a third project which I did, or rather, this never came through. This is just a proposal which I sent to an Institute of Banking and Finance, and this was on employee engagement of banking employees. So I took the sample from the significance of the study there and I just put it here, where I was talking about why would such a study be very, very important. So I also quoted a little bit of literature which told the evaluators that this study is important because of so many reasons. Yes, this is something that you might have found in your research work while you were doing your PhD, operationalization of definitions, or rather, we talk about it as operational definitions. This is not a very mandatory thing that we put in a research proposal. This can be put later in our thesis or in our project or final project work, but it would be good if you're trying to find out the operationalization or the operational definitions if you already have. As I said, if it is a working paper, you would have operational definitions. Now, you know what is meant by an operational definition. A definition which would be operationalized or which would be operational in your study is what we talk about as operational definitions. Now, what are the terms which are frequently used in the study and in what context are they used? They would be keywords to your study. And these study would be using these words in such a way that they are very, very important, or there will be a lot of focus for those kind of definitions or terms or terminologies that you use. So if you put this also a part of your study, it would look very, very, uh, meaty. It would look very nice. This is just another sample of operational definitions, a few things which I put, which was a part of my social media proposal: speed, community action or social mobilization, actual. So you would have a couple of keywords. So you can write the definitions as well as you want to make use of it in your study. So it might be generally different for some other study, but how is it that you're going to make use of it is how you write it here. Yes, a literature review is the next one. An overview of what are the past studies that happened in the particular topic. Now, this is something that all of us know very, very well. It will sound very mundane, very monotonous if I keep talking about literature review, but you know what it is. So this is what gives you the thrust. This is from where you start. Now, how far have you gone on your proposed research work with the current literature that you have? How much have you read? So what this helps you to create what we call as a conceptual model for the study. So this helps us to create or to come up what we talk about as a research gap. Then we come up with a theoretical, later on the theoretical contributions of the study, which gives us a framework of the study, and later on it helps us in creating what we call as a model framework. So this gives us the research gaps of the study. Another sample of a research gap is right here in front of you. Now, this is a sample which I took from my current project, which is on tourism and entrepreneurship. Quickly, I shall go to the next one. I'm sure that you must be having a lot of questions, so I'll just take you through this. We're reaching almost the end of the presentation by now. The next one is a methodology. Very, very important part. The crux of your study should be your methodology. So this tells you about the research design, the data collection. How are you going to go ahead with your research? The data coverage, sorry, the sample coverage. the data units that you're using, the kind of data analysis that you want to use. Are you going to do a qualitative research, exploratory, descriptive, quantitative? Is it a mixed approach? Are you going to use focus group discussions? So, what are the different kinds of methodology? You should have a fair idea when you go in for your interviews at a research agency as to what is the methodology that you're going to use, because everybody will be very keen to know about how are you going to collect your data. So this is a sample of the methodology. I have put in the coverage, the data collection, the data analysis. You can also put in other things as well. You can put in the entire research design. You can write even more things about it in case you have secondary data. What kind of secondary data are you going to use? So on and so forth. Methodology is the crux. I should say it is important. The rest of the titles are also equally important, but the methodology is the cream. It should be telling you about the hypothesis formulation in case you have arrived at hypothesis. It is not clear. If you're not clear about hypothesis, I would advise you not to talk too much about hypothesis at the moment because you have only started off with your research study. And then finally, the almost the conclusive part, or rather the concluding part of the research proposal talks about your timetable and your budget. The timeline is in 24 months. How do you plan to how do you plan to divide your timeline in such a way that you can complete your project successfully? And of course, it should be telling you about the personnel, the time, the funds, and so on that will be assisting you. Or how do you plan to spend the money that will be allotted to you? So always you will have to prepare a budget and you'll have to send it across. And there are what we talk about as government prescribed rates for research assistants and for everything, and for overheads for the institute for a project proposal. I believe it is 15 percentage. And there are rates, standard prescribed rates. In case you want a research associate or a research assistant, you would have to give your budgets on time, sorry, for travel, for equipments, and so on. So it would be different for different funding agency. They would say it should be 10 percentage of the total budget, it should be 20 percentage of the total budget, and so on for different heads. So I have not actually put in here a budget because I thought that it would be different for different agencies, so it differs. But in case you want to see how a budget look like, in case you want me to show it, I can show it to you through a hyperlink. Now, this is the timeline, how a timeline should look. An example of how a timeline should be. Where you have the entire task given in one activity, and then you would have the dates on the other one, and then you can say when do you plan to show it off or when you plan to finish off. So the plan from the planning stage till the presentation of the research project stage is completely given here. This is how you decide on your timeline. Now, yes, the last one, the last but not the least, is always about references, about bibliography. There would not be any proposal. I would say that a proposal can never be complete without references. You would have to give your references. You should be giving proper attributions, and also, as a part of courtesy, you should also be giving proper acknowledgement from where you have taken sources in your literature for arriving at your model, for arriving at your research gaps, and so on. This will only help in expanding the already existing reservoir of knowledge and information based on all previously built literature. So, yes, is what we talk about as an APA format or an MLA format. You might be using more or less an APA format for referencing. Uh, it depends accordingly to different agencies. Some of them might say APA, but I think more or less it's APA for almost every agency right now. This is how the references look like. Finally, just simple reminders on how you should be writing your research proposal. You should use simple fonts. Usually they say that we should use Times New Roman. That is one that is generally used. It should be consistent. Do not use Arial for one paragraph and Times New Roman for the other, because it would look like a cut, copy, paste job. So please be careful while you do that. People there know, they understand. They see a lot of work. So it's very easy for them to identify. Please avoid jargons that only you can understand. Do not use ampersand and shortcuts or short forms for anything. It's best that you write completely. All of you know about it, but just this, as I said, it's just a simple reminder. Grammar, correct spellings. Now, written language should be a precise and a proper one. You should always try to use catchy words and words that would always please or attract the attention of the reader, of course. Simple sentences, shorter sentences are something which are much more attractive than longer sentence with a lot of conjunctions and complicated grammar. Caption, you can use captions, graphics, but some of the agencies are dead against that. They say that we should not be sending graphics or visuals because that might influence them to giving influence them perhaps positively or negatively. I don't know, but sometimes some agencies say that we should not use visuals. And yes, we should accept that everything. Finally, let me go back to square one and say the it's tug of war between motivation and fear. So even I know that this is a very anxious thing for all of us. Once we send in a proposal, I have myself felt very anxious, quite nervous while I see hundreds of other people also sitting in the same room waiting to be called for an interview in a funding agency. I know how difficult the process is. So finally, what you have to accept is that these are all just a learning process. You might send in a proposal, it might get accepted. If it gets accepted, congratulations, very good. But keep on writing, because it is not necessary that all of them should be, catching the eye of the evaluator or the funding agency. Because I know personally that only after you keep writing do you achieve the talent, the aptitude of writing good proposals. It's a skill, it's an art. So you should master it, and only while you start writing can you do it. So once you finish of writing a proposal, it is not like, okay, I've done my work, it's done with. Keep hunting, keep looking for other proposals, keep writing, and so that some of them might click, and that will boost your confidence. So that is what I'm saying, it is all a learning process. So as Ganesh had said, I will just take you through a few funding agencies. So funding agencies, I do have a final list. What I can do is I can also share it with Ganesh so that he can pass it on to you in case you require it. Now, I have a complete list on the different funding agencies. I hope you can see this as well. The first one is UGC. It gives you a complete list of the different kinds of projects. They give you the contact address, and they also tell you you just have to go to the site to find out different calls for different schemes. The second one is the AICTE. You should keep looking at these sites. It is not that they would come once in a while. They keep doing. Is you have to go there and you have to see when the calls are. So they will tell you about the different kinds of schemes. So the third one is the CSIR. There are so many different kinds of funding agencies. The DRDO is another one. I haven't put this down in a PPT because this is a very beautiful document which gives you a very clear approach on what is expected of you and how do you write it, what kind of proposals are required. So I think there are so many, I think around 10 of them or so, where you can apply to. There is the ICSSR, the Department of Tourism, then you have the ICMR. So what I'm trying to say is not just catering to a specific field, but it caters to every other field, that is science, technology, engineering, medical backgrounds, be it biochemistry or biotechnology, whatever you require, you just have to go and see. And DST, as I have understood, is a beautiful place where you can get in. There are calls for proposals throughout the year, and you can keep looking at it because you will find some topic, some call which caters to your needs. Another one is now this is a complete document which gives the input about the agency, the details, and so on. Another document is something which would tell you only about the addresses. So this is about the addresses. So there are around I think, no, I think there are so many of them, around 60, yeah, 66 national agencies and around uh, 8 international agencies. So you can keep looking at it. Yes, when we talk about international agencies also, you can keep looking at different websites, though the calls are not very frequent, but there would be a lot of collaborations, the international collaborations that you find at different Indian research agency websites. Like the ICSSR has got a lot of international collaborations. One is with Japan. DST has a lot of international collaborations with Canada, with different countries. If you get hold of an international collaboration, that would be very, very good. And one thing is, before you apply for a project, you should make sure that you come within the sections or within the act that is put forth by the government of the country, by the Ministry of Education. So make sure that you come within the section or within, for instance, the UGC say that you should be under section 2B and 2F of the act. Now, I am from NITK, and we come under the Institute of National Importance, so we do not get any UGC project. The UGC project that I got was transferred to me while I was working with another university. I was working with Pondicherry University, and so while I was there, I got this project, and when I came to NITK, it was transferred to me. So there are limitations for certain institutions. They don't get all projects because there is a limitation that you should come under a certain act or a certain you should be under a certain statute or whatever that the Ministry of Education would ask your college to be under. So UGC is something I'm sure that all of you fall under. AICTE, of course, for engineering colleges. So you just have to be very, very clear about what is it that you come under, and then you can start applying for different kinds of projects. So with this, I would like to wind up the presentation. I know that this has been quite very long, almost an hour or so. So let me stop sharing. I'll be really delighted. In case you have questions, I shall take your questions from now on. And thank you so much for providing me with this opportunity so that I could share my experiences with all of you.